I was saying is, yeah, I am going to give you some assessments on SQL itself, which will be little advanced or little challenging for you. And for that reason, you have to start preparing your notes. So basically, it should be handwritten notes, first point, and you have to, uh, what you can say, you have to start writing your notes so that it would be very helpful, right? I personally have, I personally have very good feedback of this thing. Whenever I was preparing for my interviews and everything, I used to only revise all the content from my notebook itself. So even if you, let's say, if you want to revise SQL, what happens is you have to watch the recorded videos, and which consist of 15 hours, 20 hours only for SQL, or let's say for machine learning, it consists of 20 hours or 30 hours. So for that reason, I'll recommend you to prepare a note in that itself. Let's say 7 to 8 pages will be 7 to 8 pages will be for SQL itself, right? So on a single or in a single notebook, you'll be having entire content. So you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to watch your recordings. So uh, you will, in short, you will save your time when there is an interview. There is an interview, right? All right. Now, what we'll do is I will, before also I have shared this on first day itself. So basically, I have more than 5 years of experience in this domain. Um, I have worked as a data analyst research intern in IIT Madras. We basically have done several projects associated with different governments of India or different government of state governments, which is associated and affiliated with governments of India in the field of NLP, computer vision, and machine learning. Apart from that, I am currently working as a data scientist in this organization. And when it comes to training, I have more than 4 years of experience as a trainer. I have given trainings to this organization, Simply Learn, XLR, Imaticus, and Gobi by IIT Madras Research Park. Right? You can connect to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. This is my ID, or you can simply search. This is my profile. So it's all about me. Now, let us start with the SQL or SQL. So, what do you think? Why SQL is important, or what is SQL? Why do we use SQL or SQL? Yes, everyone.
Yeah, SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it is a language mostly used for handling large amount of data. Like there are some limitations of Excel, which handles most of 1,000 rows, but there is no any limitations of structured query language. That's why we are mostly preferable to SQL.
Okay. So we have to deal with large amount of. Whenever we want to deal with large amount of data, we have to use the SQL.
SQL.
Okay. Then apart from this,
Structural data.
yeah,
Structural data, sir. Structural data.
They're in form of rows and column.
Sorry.
okay.
They're in form of column.
So structured data. Structured means, what do you mean by structured data?
You can say
The table.
Tabular data. Yes. Very good. So can't we do on Excel, on Python?
We can do in Excel as well as in Python, but the advantages which SQL give is far more better than these two, because SQL is specially designed for this, to handle and to manipulate this structural data.
Okay. All right.
While Excel has some limitations on tabular data, I think Excel is better. Excel is best at tabulation at a given limit. But what it comes to SQL is we can edit millions of data on it, and it can do it without even jittering a little bit. Excel actually jitters if you put a huge amount of data in it.
Right. So basically, it is used to deal with several different databases out there. And whenever you want to make connection between the data, it's very, suppose you have multiple database. For an example, you have e-commerce data, you have HR data, right? You have department data. Then let's say you have employees data. They are the different data that you have, and you have to establish connection between this data. You have to find some relations, right? So to deal with different data sets or different databases, SQL is widely used, right? Apart from that, we have a number of applications. But let us divide our today's agenda into several points. So we are going to see database design. In that, first point will be introduction. Why introduction to database management system, or what is SQL? We should know what is data warehouse, right? Third point, you should know structure of data house, structure of a data warehouse. Fourth point that we have is star schema. What do you mean by star schema? What do you mean by online analytical
transaction.
it is known as OLAP versus OLT. We'll see this thing at that point. Transactional and analytical. Online transactional and online analytical processing. Then SETL. Generally, people is familiar with ETL process, right? Which is known as extract, transform, and load. But there is one more thing which is important: select, extract, then transform, and then load. Let's seven. Seven is entity constraints. What do you mean by entity constraint, or why there is need of constraints? Then we have referential constraint. Then we have semantic. There's something which is known as semantic constraint. Then followed by we have entity relationship diagram. Last but not the least is your star schema. There's something which is known as star schema. A demonstration of that. Why it is required. And last but not the least, we are going to go with the summary part. So this summarizes your today's agenda. I hope we will be able to finish this out in today's session. Right? So let us try to understand first point, introduction. Right? So SQL, which is very crucial for data analysis, but for businesses to meaningfully use these tools, the data needs to be in format which makes it easier to find answer to business problems. But usually what happens is your data is scanned across various departments, right? We have various departments. Let's consider our organization. Suppose you are working as a data scientist in an organization. Then, guys, just a minute. I'm getting call from this Tweelan organization only. So the data is scanned across various department and local data repositories. So how do you meaningfully analyze the data of millions users that you have in your organization and products that they are using? So there is, that's why the data warehousing and business intelligence comes into the picture, right? So in this module, we will look at the important techniques called as OLAP, which is known as online analytical processing. Online analytical processing. And it is known as OLAP in short. And there are two important technologies that play a role in that implementation of OLAP. The data warehouse. First, we need to understand data warehouse and business intelligence. So data warehouse backend में काम करता है. It works in the backend. And we have business intelligence BI, which works in the front end, right? So business intelligence में क्या आता है? Dashboarding thing, Tableau, Power BI का काम, right? I hope you guys know about business intelligence. Now let's talk about let's begin by talking about the data warehouse. There is a lot of engaging discussion surrounding what is data warehouse is and how it is different from a regular database we use on a day-to-day basis for looking out. We can take example of stock market, right? In stock market, the data is getting generated by booking out tickets, placing your orders in stock market, right? And there are other information lying in various system across the back. And how we simply keep track of everything around the data. So we have to have the data warehouse. So what is data warehouse? It is a central. If somebody asks you what is data warehouse, you should say it is a central, what we can say, repository. Yes, it's a central repository of data from various sources. Now, let us look at the couple of examples to see when you would not consider this as to be a data warehouse. Suppose we collect all the information from online portal like NASCOM. Do you guys know NASCOM?
Yes,
What is NASSCOM?
it's a non-profit organization. It actually gives licenses, or maybe it keeps on. It's mainly a technological, industry, which actually keeps on revising the syllabus and all. If some institute wants to launch a course, if they are in sync with NASSCOM, then they are considered to be abreast with what's happening in IT and all.
Right? So let's suppose we collected all the information from an online portal like nascom.com, where startups can log in and upload their information, applying for funding. If my dataset included all their application details, the buyer data would be there, or there will be, let's say this is your data in which uh, you have collected all the information. There will be buyer data of all the employees information about their past products, so on. They can clearly see our data, what it contains information about many subjects according to bill. And so basically there would be sector wise or geography wise analysis of our investment. We should include only data pertaining to these subjects. So there will be information about different sectors. Why I'm just
Sir, your voice is pretty low. I don't know why. Maybe it's the issue with my computer or there.
I also
Yeah, I think everybody is facing that. Your voice is not very much audible. Either you have to speak a little louder or maybe into the mic.
I think so. You want to take a call.
Yes, I guess.
yeah. Is it fine now?
Yeah, better.
better, sir.
So where were we? We are discussing NASCOM example, right? Yeah. So we have buyer data, we have sector-wise analysis, geographical analysis. Now, uh, so basically, NASCOM, we are collecting a data of different startup organization, where we are going to get the different sector-wise analysis or geographical analysis of our investment. We should include only data pertaining to the subjects in our data warehouse. So let us move on to the second keyword from the definition of data warehouse, that the data warehouse is an integrated repository. So I should write down the points. Just a minute. For this, we have, if somebody asks you in an interview, what is data warehouse, there should be point-wise analysis. The first point that you should write,
Sorry, your voice is not coming. Hello.
yeah. So first point that we should write is, it is a subject oriented in nature. Data warehouse is a subject oriented in nature. What we mean by this is, data warehouse includes the collection of data pertaining to a handful of well-defined subjects, rather than including the whole mammoth of information of the entire enterprise. Just we have seen example of NASCOM, where we are just only interested to get information about the investment which are related to our organization. So there will be sector wise information, or there will be geographical information. about your analysis or about your startup details, investment details. Second point that you have is, which we have discussed, is second keyword point from the definition is, I'll write down over here. So it is an integrated repository. It is an integrated repository.
Sir, can you please explain? Sir, can you please once again explain the first point, sir? Subject oriented in nature.
सब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड का मीनिंग क्या है? सपोज आपको क्या करना है, आपको नेस्कॉम में nascom.com में आप गए, वेयर यू हैव सिलेक्टेड स्टार्टअप. तो मतलब nascom में व्हाई वी आर गोइंग इज, वी आर डूइंग इंटरेस्टेड टू डूइंग द एनालिसिस ऑफ startups and their investor, buyer and employees information. So we are only interested in sector wise and geographical wise analysis of our investment, where we should only include data pertaining to these subjects in our data warehouse. So subject oriented क्यों है कि because we are only concerned with our subject, right? What is our subject over here? nascom.com, investment in this buyer details, investor details and their sector wise analysis, right? The second point that we can form is, it is integrated repository. So what do you mean by integrated repository? Let us try to understand this. So yeah, so think yourself as a data analyst working for a company that has following three departments. Let's say we have marketing department, we have sales department, and we have finance department. Now let us assume each department maintains their separate database, right? Each department maintain their separate database. So this could lead to a situation where each department has its own version of the facts. Now, what do you mean by fact? What do you mean by dimension? We should understand facts and dimension over here. These are the two important terms in the database or database management system. Can anybody know by any chance what do you mean by fact?
Yes.
That means there is
Fact
a
is a
only
collection of
numbers.
information.
Collection of information. Okay.
Correct. Dimensions, you have generally one fact table and many dimensions table, just like a star schema. So each dimension is connected to one fact table. Just like that, the fact table is the main table, is the primary table, and then you have dimensions table. For
Yeah,
example,
but facts.
fact can be like your employee ID or something, and then dimensions can be your product ID, your customer name, your customer address, customer details, the category of products, like that. It can be dimensions, and facts are mainly the main one which is connected to. It can have one to many or many to one relationships.
Yeah, but in very
Fact
simple terms,
can, sir, fact table can have only one to many, I guess, relationship, because fact table is the one which contains unique value. Especially, it also contains the primary key. Yeah, these two things. I mean, it only contains one to many relationship, and the one will be the fact table, and many will be the dimensional table.
right? So consider fact as a numbers. Just remember, fact is a numerical data, and uh, dimension is your metadata attached to the fact variable, which is explaining the fact variable. Don't worry if you are not understanding this point at this point of time. We are going to have a separate discussion on this. Let us move towards the data warehouse definition, where we have discussed few points. First point is related to your, or let's imagine, let's consider a situation where we are working as a data analyst. We have separate tables: marketing, sales, and finance, and we have to solve several questions like what is total revenue of the last quarter. Every department might have different answer, right? Marketing का अलग revenue रहेगा last quarter में, sales का अलग रहेगा, finance का अलग रहेगा. This is because each department draws information from different database, right? Suppose this is your marketing database, this is your sales database, this is your finance database, right? So this is because each department draws information from the different database: marketing, sales, and finance. So each department will have the total revenue of the last quarter as different parameter or different answer, right? So this is where a database can prove to be useful. It can help with creating a single version of the truth and the facts. A data warehouse would be a central repository of the data of the entire enterprise. So वो क्या है? That is a central repository containing all the databases from the different departments in your enterprise, right? We should start learning the definition of data warehouse by this point. It is a subject oriented in nature. What do you mean by data? What do you mean by subject oriented in nature? So आपका जो data warehouse है, जो data warehouse होने वाला है, it should contain information about few well defined subjects rather than enterprise. पूरा उसमें enterprise और आपके organization का data नहीं चाहिए. It should contain information about the well defined subjects. Like let's consider marketing. तो marketing का एक information रहना चाहिए, sales का रहना चाहिए, finance का रहना चाहिए. सारे enterprises में सारा confusion नहीं रहना चाहिए उसमें. It should be subject oriented in nature. Second, it should be integrated. Is an integrated repository. What do you mean by integrated repository? It should contain information from various systems within organization. So it's a central repository, central integrated repository. Third, it should be non-volatile. It should be non-volatile. What do you mean by non-volatility? So let's say I have added few data. Let's say I have added investment. Let's take that example. ये investment money है, ये debt है, right? So suppose there is ABC investor on 15th June 2024. ABC investor ने क्या किया है? $15 million इन्वेस्ट किया. Right. So what we were discussing is non-volatility. What do you mean by non-volatility? The data values in the database cannot be changed without a valid reason. तो ये जो है ये चेंज नहीं होगा. सपोज मुझे कुछ ऐड करना है, अदर इन्वेस्टमेंट डेटा. सपोज XYZ एक इन्वेस्टर आया मेरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, उसने लेट्स से 25 अगस्त को और एक इन्वेस्टमेंट किया $20 million का. So it should be non-volatile. It should not, the values cannot be changed without a valid reason. Unless and until there is a valid reason, value should not be changed without a valid reason. Last point is time variant. It is a time variant. Data warehouse is a time variant. It contains, obviously, it should contain historical data for your analysis. That's the reason it should be time variant, right? Now you can stretch your explanation to the interviewer for this particular point according to your own example. So first is it is a subject oriented. Second, it is integrated repository. Third is it should be non-volatile. Fourth is time variant. So you can have n number of examples for this.
वॉइस बहुत ब्रेक हो रही है.
Is it just a minute, I'll just change the Wi-Fi. Right. So what was the last point? The last point is time variant, right?
Yes, sir.
I would like to add time variance does not contradict with the non-volatility requirement. Non-volatility क्या करता है? It only prevents existing data from being changed without any legitimate reason. There is no problem with newer data being added to build historical information. For example, just think about our investment data. We have an investor, ABC, who invested $50 million in dash website, and we are not allowed to fudge that information, fudge that number, or change because it is a non-volatile from you. There is a non-volatility from you. On the other hand, if the same investor had invested in the same company or some other company, sometime or later, we are allowed to add the data to build historical information about that investor, right? So there you have it, the full definition of a data warehouse. We saw importance of the different keywords from the definition, orientation, integrated, subject integrated, non-volatility, time variance data warehouses are important for the organization because you have to do the analysis of the data from an enterprise view. If you are looking at an enterprise view, you have to work with all the system in the enterprises. So for example, let's consider another example. Suppose you're working as a CEO in the organization or any CFO of the company, financial operation of the company, and I need to look at my organization in its totality. Then what will happen if I will have multiple system talking to you? I will have sales system. I will have uh, HR system talking with me. I will have marketing, risk management. We have several systems, right, in organization, risk management or marketing. Then now we don't get one view. If I were to give out this task to somebody to create that one view, they would go, they would have to go and understand all these systems together, and they would have to understand appropriate linkage between these systems, right? And they would have to create that view. So this type of problem will get solved by the data warehouse system, right? So this could be another definition, but I will recommend you guys to remember this definition as part of your interview. If somebody asks you what is data warehouse, so you should add at this point and you should explain according to your capability, right? So ये हो गया आपका first point. This is all about the introductory part. Now I would like to move further with the second point in our discussion. What was that? ये हो गया introduction, data warehouse हो गया. Structure of a data warehouse, right? Structure of a data warehouse. So let's rename this as what is data warehouse, and let's do some fancy things. Let's change tab color to this one. Add this. Let's rename this as structure of a data warehouse. Right now, in the previous discussion, we have learned about basic concept of data warehousing. Now, one of the primary methods of designing data warehouses is your dimensional modeling. Now, there are two key elements which we already have discussed in dimensional modeling. First is your facts, and second that you have is dimensions. Now we should discuss with these two terms, facts and dimension, which are basically different types of variables that are used to design a data warehouse. They are arranged in a specific manner known as schema diagram. These two are arranged in a specific format, which is known as schema diagram. So essentially, just a minute. Right?
Sir, one question, sir. What is a schema?
That is what we are going to see now, right? Dimensional modeling or structure of a data warehouse. वही तो सीख रहे हैं अभी. So, essentially, fact. What do you mean by fact? Very simple word. It is a numerical data. It's a numerical data in a data warehouse. Right? And dimension are the metadata. Dimension are the metadata. That is data. Metadata का meaning क्या है? Data explaining other data which is attached to the fact variable. Right?
Can we say that fact is a measure and dimension is a variables?
Fact is a
Measure, like it indicates numerical data, like when we are creating a visualization form in the tableaus, so there is a two measures, matlab two types of data come. First is measure and second is dimension, like numerical data and a variable.
I'll give you
means-
example in this thing. Don't worry. We are not going to
Okay, fine.
study this only theoretically. I'll give you example to this. First, let us check. So both facts and dimensions, both facts and dimensions are equally important. Both facts and dimension are equally important for generating actionable insights from a data set. Right? Now, for an example, we will try to arrange a data. Let's take an example of Flipkart or Amazon, which is known as online transactional just a minute. Where is that? I have written something called as online transactional OLTP. इसका full form OLTP. Online transaction processing. Yeah. Online transactional processing means, for example, your Flipkart or Amazon. What do you do? What do you think? ये जो Flipkart का, suppose if you are visiting this website, starting right from the clicking on any product to purchasing, add to the cart, buy now, then you add some data over here. What do you think ये सारा कहाँ पे store होता होगा? What do you think? It's stored in the, yeah, it is stored in a database which is known as online transactional database. So consider an example of Flipkart or Amazon. And you are working in an organization such as Flipkart or Amazon, and you're asked to identify the products in the electronics segment that are non-profitable in rural Uttar Pradesh. So you have to test if this is due to high cost of transportation, or you have to access to the sales database from various districts, various product information order information, which includes the means of transport, use, customer management system, database, and many other such database. And how will you proceed with this thing is we should understand the how would you proceed in understanding and making analysis of any electric segment, why it is not non-profitable. We are going to see this, right? So that's why ये जो star schema है, that's why it is important, star schema. So what is star schema? We should understand that. So so for very first thing is we need to create appropriate structure for storing the data by structures. So by structure we mean what should be the tables and what should be the column. Suppose आप एक table बना रहे हो, तो what should be the table, what should be the column? You should make a proper analysis on this. And what should be the data types and so on. And this is known as design. This is known as design of a data warehouse. We'll now talk about a specific design technique, and this technique is called as dimensional modeling. So what do you mean by dimensional modeling? There are two key elements that we have to discuss over here. First is fact and second is dimension. Facts, let us talk about fact. Basic, it's a numerical data that we want to analyze. It is a fact in general is numerical attribute which is known as fact variable as well. If you take an example of investment data file, so investment amount जो है, that is an example of fact variable, right? Here investor का detail था, यहाँ पे let's say website है, कौन से website से किया investment, यहाँ पे date था, and you had amount, right? Amount in dollars. So the amount that we have is your fact variable. Now you can look into company data where and we can identify the fact variable. Basically, that is your funding in total US dollar. Now, there are several fact variables that we can have as far as part of our example. We can take another example wherein we'll take customer data लेके और उसमें से कौन से फैक्ट बन सकते हैं वो अपन कंसिडर करेंगे. Now let us talk about dimension variable. What do you mean by dimension variable? It add life to the fact variable. What I mean by this is dimension can be used as the basis for analyzing the fact data in a sector list. Is an example of dimension variable. For an example, company being funded, वो हो गया dimension, और funding agency information. Suppose ABC investor tha, that is your funding agency, is an example of dimension variable. You can see that without this dimension variable, the fact variable are meaningless. And what analysis can you do with a big bunch of numbers without having an additional information about those number? That is why dimension variable can be thought of as metadata corresponding to the fact variable. Several dimensions attributes, for example, company permanent link, name of the sector list, country code, state code, region, city, along with their values make up your dimension table. Now, what it means as an analyst, you can choose any of this attribute to initiate your analysis, and you can analyze the investment on the basis of sector or the state code or the city, right? So that is why your dimension is very important. Now, in a nutshell, in very
Sir,
simple,
can we just like I have a doubt, sir. You can say you just said that uh, dimension table is a metadata data explaining other data. So can we say that the dimensional table is the table or table that explain the features of fact table or fact table?
yes. The dimension is nothing but a variable explains the fact variable, right? See, अब इसमें क्या है, funding amount जो है, that is in numbers, right? So this is your fact variable, but this dimension add life to the fact variable, and the reason why we need dimension is how you can analyze the funding or how you can analyze the fact. ये आपका fact हो गया ना, but how you can analyze the fact if you don't have dimension, right? You should, I mean, there is a necessity that आपके पास इन्वेस्टर रहना चाहिए, कंपनी का डिटेल्स रहना चाहिए, डेट रहना चाहिए, कंपनी कोड रहना चाहिए, स्टेट कोड रहना चाहिए, सिटी कोड रहना चाहिए. Then only it makes sense to analyze the data, right? So that's why फैक्ट के लिए, फैक्ट को जान में जान डालने के लिए you should have the dimension. Now I hope this point is clear for everyone.
Yes.
If
Can
this,
there be two fact tables?
yeah,
Can there be two fact tables?
there is only one fact table.
Yeah, I'm asking a question. I know, but I'm saying, can there be a two fact table? And if not, then why?
Okay, we are going to discuss this, no? If you're curious enough, if you already know this, you should make the suspense, right? It's like you're asking in a way that you're testing my knowledge. First question. May I get to know, Varun, the reason why you want to get to know this thing? You already know, no? You told me.
I am saying it's not about I'm testing your knowledge. It's about general knowledge. If I am getting to understand something, I want to get in depth about some things. That is why I'm saying I know there can be only one fact table, but there's an extra question which I do not know. The question mark I'm asking you, if not, then why? There has to be a logic. There's logic behind everything in the world.
So
Why the earth is round, why it is not flat? There's a reason behind it, right?
there is a way also, no? There is way in which you should ask the questions,
But
no?
if somebody asks you tomorrow in the interview why there cannot be two fact tables, then what will you answer? What's the plausible reason behind it? That's, I'm not trying to ask a question or your credibility per se. I hope you
Right.
understand that. I'm
I
just
totally understand your question, but there is a way in which you should ask question, right?
I have
There's a
already
way in which we should ask question, or there's a something which is known as manners, and we should not expect it from everyone. Yeah, if you know it, it's good. And if you know it, you can leave this session as well. I'm teaching this to the guys or to the students who are not at all aware about this fact or dimension. My task is not here to explain to the students out there who already know the thing. It's waste of your time, right?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so
We are new learner.
we were understanding the,
मैंने भी सर पहली बार ज्वाइन किया है, मैं पहली बार सीख रहा हूँ.
yeah, that's what that the basically what I feel is it should be in a flow. If you are learning mathematics or if you're learning ABCD, or if someone is expecting ki I should explain what do you mean by sentence or what is grammar, there should be a way, right? Okay, anyway, we should not waste our time. We should see the star schema. So somebody has asked this question, right? What is a star schema? Yeah, Aditya, आपने पूछा था मैं. You have asked this question, right?
यस सर, मेरे को स्कीमा मतलब हमेशा से कंफ्यूज रहा हूँ सर.
Okay, okay. See, what happens is, let's say you have e-commerce data, right? Let's take that online transactional processing, Flipkart, right? Suppose we have a data wherein we have date of purchase, we have product, right? We have customer, and we have quantity, right? I have a date 5 Jan 2007. Let's then 6th Jan. The product.
सर सॉरी टू इंटरप्ट बट मतलब शायद शायद आई एम नॉट श्योर, शायद स्कीमा का कोई डायग्राम वायग्राम भी होता है ना सर?
Yes, yes, yes. Basically, we are trying to. Uh, it is known as dimensional modeling. We are trying to We are trying to establish connection between several table, and that ultimately is in the form of star. So उसको बोलते हैं star scheme. That's the reason it is called as star scheme.
सर प्लीज सर, आप वो डायग्राम भी अगर दिखाते तो अच्छा होता.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to show that just a minute. So what we are doing is ये अपन data generate कर रहे हैं. Suppose there is a customer named John who has purchased 2 quantity of pizza. Second, 6th of Jan 2007, we have product which is known as Coke. Again, purchased by John. Quantity is 5. So likewise, you can add on data, right? Now, we are trying to establish a connection between this, which is known as data modeling. And let us try to see the star schema. So this is your fact table, which is a central table. There is a date. There's a product. There's a customer. And there's a quantity. Right? अभी मैं एक टेबल बना रहा हूँ जो कि है मेरा प्रोडक्ट टेबल. Here you can have name, you can have category, then another table है आपके पास. There is a date in which you have days and holiday. Right? Then we have another table, customer. There's name, there's city, and there's category. So in a nutshell, if you see, this is looking like a star. It is developing like a star. That's the reason it is known as star scheme. So if you want to see another example of a star schema, you can have this example wherein there is a central fact table, sales, and you have different connection, and it looks like star. That's the reason it is known as star scheme, right?
सर हम लोग जैसे यहाँ पे नियरली 5 टेबल है सर, सो Are we connecting these table based on the primary key or what?
Yeah, वो अपन discuss करेंगे. Once we will start the SQL part, we'll discuss this foreign key, primary key. What do you mean by this? We'll discuss it one by one. But as of now, I don't want to give more information about primary key, foreign key. वो सारा confusion हो जाएगा. When we are going to see that, तब आपको समझेगा कि primary key, what is your primary key, what are the difference between primary key and foreign key, right? That's the reason I've not included. This is just a theoretical part of SQL or data warehouse. We haven't started SQL as, right? So we are having a product that was purchased. We are having customer who purchased the product. We are having quantity that was purchased. And so this is the schema to begin with. You can kind of analyze. I can find out how many products are there, how many products John purchased. I can identify John from the customer table. Just a minute. Where is that diagram? Right? Then we can purchase the money quantity, which is or we can analyze quantity, or we can analyze the product. Pizza purchase how many time, Coke purchase how many time, like that. So I want to summarize this particular information. Based on this information alone, there should be certain number of reports I can create. But definitely I'm not uh, or basically I want to, suppose you want to solve this question, like how many people from Bangalore are purchasing this particular product, right? So ये एक आपका database will not help you out to solve this. That's the reason there is a need of this schema, right? Then next point is, uh, if you want to analyze what is the trend on particular weekends, weekend में ज़्यादा purchase हो रहा है और weekdays में हो रहा है, तो you cannot able to analyze it from the table, right? That's the reason we should develop a schema, and we should merely name, I mean, we should be able to analyze all of our questions from this star schema. Yeah. Yes, somebody had a question.
Sir, can we say multiple dimension table connected with only fact table? So it's called star schema.
It's called.
Star schema means
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
multiple dimension table connected with only one fact table.
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir, got it.
Now, once, I mean, we have an idea about this, we should understand the difference between this question, and this is very important question which generally gets asked in the interview. Probably uh, there is very uh, considerable amount of confusion between this question. The question somebody, I mean, सब लोग ये गलत question पूछते हैं. The question is the difference between database and data warehouse. Many time you guys will or somebody will ask you this question: what is the difference between database and data warehouse then? But it should not be this question. Correct question is, at first time itself I'll say this is the wrong question. The correct question is difference between database and transactional database. Yeah.
सर एक चीज मेरे को पूछना है सर, अभी आपने बोला कि डेटाबेस और स्कीमा सर, तो दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या होता है सर? मतलब ये मैं
Database और
समझ नहीं
schema
पाया,
ना.
ये मैं समझ नहीं पाया सर.
देखो, this is your database. Schema is what? A connection which is established between fact table and dimension table. That is a schema. That is a structure.
ओके 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 ओके. अच्छा, गॉट इट.
Right? What is a database? It's a table in which you have all the information. बट वो टेबल से आपको एनालिसिस करने को बहुत डिफिकल्ट होगा ऑब्वियसली, राइट? सपोज मेरे पास ऐसा टेबल है जिसमें डेट ऑफ परचेस है, प्रोडक्ट है, कस्टमर है, क्वांटिटी है, और मुझे एनालाइज करना है कि ऑन अ पर्टिकुलर वीकेंड वीकेंड में पिज्ज़ा या कोक का क्वांटिटी कितना सोल्ड आउट हुआ है, और आई वांट टू एनालाइज कि वो इज दैट पर्टिकुलर कस्टमर जो हिज परचेजिंग पिज्ज़ा फ्रिक्वेंटली. तो ये डेटाबेस से एनालिसिस नहीं होगा ना. ये कैसे होगा आपका एनालिसिस? इफ यू हैव अ स्कीमा, राइट?
So
If you have
basically,
schema,
if we have multiple tables, okay, then if we have multiple tables, then our analysis will be more accurate and more pinpoint. We'll connect these tables with the help of schema, right?
if there is a multiple database,
Okay.
in order to analyze that, organize that, we use the schema. It's in very simple way,
Okay. Okay. Got it. Sir.
right?
Hmm.
Then we have uh, something which is known as OLAP, online analytical processing, or online transactional processing. The difference between database and transactional database, right? Database क्या है? It can be any database. But what is transactional database? जहाँ पे transaction हो रहे हैं. The difference between database and transactional database is we have to understand this. So uh, let's say this is very vexing question. People generally
Excuse me,
ask,
sir.
yeah,
Like a transactional database is something like our bank statements. Would that be a transactional database?
yeah. Transactional database का simple फंडा क्या है? Any database wherein you have the transactions. So आप फ्लिपकार्ट का डेटा ले सकते हो, अमेजोन का डेटा ले सकते हो, या फिर जिसमें पेमेंट्स इंक्लूडेड है,
Okay. Okay.
right? So it's very confusing question, vexing question about the difference between data warehouse and database. To begin with, as I told, I'll tell you this is wrong question at all. You should ask the reason. I mean, there is nothing. I mean, the main question you should ask is difference between database and transactional database. Database and or difference between data warehouse and transactional database. So let me define this term called transactional database by taking out an example of e-commerce, or for an example Flipkart or Amazon. So normal purchase that you do on the website, right? You log in, you search your product, you search your product, you add it to the cart, and then you connect to the payment system, and then you make your payments, you enter your OTP, right? So this whole thing requires some kind of database, and so this database is called as transactional database, right? So the most familiar database that we all use to is your transactional database. Now what is the difference between, sorry, my bad, it should be data warehouse. What is the difference between data warehouse and transactional database? So we should add this difference by using points, right? Now let's see this one by one by adding points. Yeah, so first point that we can say is it is related to purpose. So first point is related to purpose. To perform business transaction. to conduct analysis and decision making. Second point is related to user, end-to-end users. So your transactional, okay, the point should be transactional database. And here we should add data warehouse. Like somebody have asked this question, transactional but database का meaning क्या है? Any database that helps you carry out some activities, whether it is related to banking system or you can use your card in the ATM machine. That is your transaction, right? So that sums up your transactional database. It is a type of database which helps to carry out day-to-day business transaction, whatever that might be. The domain might be uh, transaction, right? And data warehouse. Data warehouse क्या है? It is used to conduct analysis and decision making in any type of organization, not related to transaction. So this is solely not related to transaction. Second point that we can have is transactional database is used by end users like you, me, and who want to carry out some business transaction online. On the other hand, data warehouse database is used by decision makers, by managers, right? So typically, CEO, CXO, or even a person who is more into decision making. In fact, for those kind of decision system where you used to call as the decision support system or MIS, management information system, or just information system. So the first difference is in terms of users who are using it. If you want to go a bit deeper in this, we can also begin to distinguish on a technical side. So first of all, let's try to understand similarities between this both. In both the cases, transaction database and data warehouse, you have a server ecosystem that is there to support the system. If it is a decision support system or analytics system in a data warehouse, or if it is a transactional database, in both cases there are databases. So the similarity is there in the both cases. There are some database management system software that is running for managing the data in terms of technology, and additional moving parts भी रहेंगे उसमें when it comes to and when it comes to data warehouse, it is an architecture where there will be, so we are discussing user, right? User में क्या रहेगा? End users will be for solely your business transaction, and who uses, who users for data warehouse will be managers, CEOs, CXOs for decision making, right? Then next difference that we can have is we can add third point related to technology used. Technology used. The technology used over here is there will be no ETL process in transactional database. What is ETL? Extract, transform, load. Here, there will be ETL process You have to extract the data, transform the data, load the data. Why do we use SETL or ETL? We'll see this after 2 or 3 minutes. What is ETL? What is extract, transform, load? We'll see that. So डेटा वेयरहाउस का अगर आपको स्ट्रक्चर लिखना होगा तो it could be multiple sources, multiple department, and multiple database. So ETL process, there is no any place for ETL process in transactional database. In transactional database, you have the DBMS, database management system. You have other side, server side applications, no APIs, and application server, no JBoss server, or so the on the technology stack, it is quite different when it comes to transactional database compared to data warehouse database. So the key difference, and even at the server level, is that it offers no ETL process. Transactional database offers no ETL present in the this thing. And next, we can have as a fourth point is front-end technology. So front-end में क्या रहेगा? You'll have web servers, you'll have browser, you'll have mobile phones, you'll have interface with payment gateway.
सर फ्रंट एंड टेक्नोलॉजी का मतलब यहाँ से डेटा आएगा, राइट?
हाँ, मतलब the thing that you will be able to see. Front end मतलब क्या कि the thing that we are able to see. Back end we cannot see, right? Back end में क्या हो रहा है you don't know. But front end में they'll show your Power BI reports, dashboard. You'll be able to see payment gateway. You'll be able to see on mobile phones. You'll be able to see transactional different transaction. Browser पे भी आप देख सकते हो. तो ऐसा.
So front end is responsible for creating data, if like we can say that.
Sorry.
Correct me, please correct me if I'm wrong. Like front end is responsible for creating data.
Front
Like
end is responsible for creating data. Yeah, you can say like that. Because मोबाइल फोन से ही डेटा जनरेट हो रहा है, राइट? और पेमेंट गेट्सवे से ही जनरेट हो रहा है.
got it, sir, got it.
और इसमें there are different BI tools which we use in data warehouse. Cognos करके एक BI tool है और Tableau में भी एक different versions है, paid versions that we use BI tools like reporting tools which add value to the information that is stored in the data warehouse database. So we can do a lot of analysis and we can drill down, we can roll up this kind of operations that can be done in data warehouse database using business intelligent front end. Whereas in transactional database, we generally don't have any such front end, and there a lot of interactive reporting is generally not available in transactional database. So we cannot generate an inventory reports of my products in my shelf, for example. So beyond that, there is no much of analytics that is going on. So even technology stack जो रहेगा, it is kind of different from a data warehouse database versus a transactional database, right? Apart from that, we can have multiple.
सर मतलब ट्रांजैक्शनल डेटाबेस को हम लोग विजुअलाइज नहीं कर सकते हैं या फिर आप क्या बोले, मेरे को समझ में नहीं आया।
We cannot have much of analytical part in transactional database. Like we don't have any reports, right? There is no use of Power BI tools, or there is no use of business intelligence tools. On the other hand, data warehouse में you have the access to buy tools.
बट अगर ट्रांजैक्शनल, जस्ट अ क्वेश्चन सर, लेकिन अगर ट्रांजैक्शनल डेटाबेस है तो उसमें फॉर श्योर, जैसे आपने बताया कि ट्रांजैक्शनल डेटा होगा, तो ट्रांजैक्शनल डेटा तो किसी भी बिजनेस के लिए बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट होता है और उसको एनालाइज भी करना बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट होता है। सो लाइक इफ अ CEO wants to see these transactional database, we can use a BI tool and we can show it to the CEO in a simplistic manner.
But in transactional database, we generally don't have front end technology, which is known as interactive reporting, and generally not available on transactional database.
सर ये इंटरेक्टिव रिपोर्टिंग मतलब मैंने तो
I'll give you notes for this. Don't worry. I'm just explaining this. You'll be able to figure it out. Your question. Your question is why can't we use BI reports in transactional database, right?
यस सर, यस सर, यस सर।
I'll give you notes for this. Don't worry. We cannot use. Don't remember this point. We cannot use.
ओके।
So this is what we have for the difference point of view. So the right question is, it's not difference between database and data warehouse, right? It is a difference between transactional database and data warehouse. तो ट्रांजैक्शनल डेटाबेस है, उसको बोलते हैं ऑनलाइन ट्रांजैक्शनल प्रोसेसिंग सिस्टम। और ये जो है ओला, इसको बोलते हैं OLTP, इसको बोलते हैं OLAP. This is something which is known as online analytical processing system. Now, obviously, we have few differences in terms of design. Here you cannot have star schema because it's only a database. Here we can create star schema. इसका access कैसा रहेगा? There is a process which is known as CRUD. In order to access the transactional database, you can create, you can retrieve, you can update, you can delete. So it's a CRUD operation. और इसको एक्सेस कैसे कर सकते हैं आप? डेटा वेयरहाउस को स्टार स्कीमा कर सकते हो, और आप डायमेंशनल मॉडलिंग भी कर सकते हो टू डू द एनालिसिस और टू एक्सेस द। तो बेसिकली विल फिगर दिस आउट बाय एडिंग दिस पॉइंट, डेटाबेस का डिजाइन, right? And this is also known as. So to summarize this, we have this point about the difference between transactional database and data warehouse. There is no any point ki, matlab this is a wrong question where we are interested to find the difference between database and data warehouse. It should be a transactional database and data warehouse. So first is purpose: to perform business transaction, to conduct analysis and decision making, solely not related to transaction. Users are end user है आपका business transaction, end users for business transaction. यहाँ पे manager है, CEO, CXOs और different person who are responsible for decision making. Technology use है, no ETL, ETL process allowed, front end technology, this is your point. And it is also known as online transactional processing, or data warehouse. It is also known as online analytical processing system. Database may you cannot have star schema because database is nothing but it's a table. But what is data warehouse? It's a collection of table, right? So to analyze the data, to design your data warehouse, you can have a star schema. Right? So we are just trying to understand the basics of DBMS. We have not started the, what we can say, SQL part. It's still remaining. We have just started database design. So what is database? How to design database? What are the terms associated with database? Right? So far we have discussed. We have learned about different types of database that are available for solving different problems. Now let us try to understand select, extract, transform, and load. So so we need to get data into a schema to perform relevant operations on the data. So you might wonder, or you might be wondering how it is done. How data is, what you can say, how data is performed or is put into schema to perform relevant operation, right? So we have SETL process for that. Select, extract, transform, load. So what is select? It's not same as your select, which we do in SQL, although which is very important, select, but it is identification of the data that you want to analyze, right? Second point क्या है? Second है extract. Extract में क्या करते हो आप? Connecting to the particular data source and pulling out the data. Transform. Why there is need of transform? Sometimes, suppose, let's take that example, NASCOM example, where we are interested to do the startup analysis. Now, if you have data in dollars, you're living in India, right? You have to transform that into suitable unit, right? Agar suppose you have pound, right? But in India, we don't use pound, but in your data, you have pound. You have to transform that to a suitable unit and you can do the analysis. Yes or no? So we basically transform the data, modifying the extracted data to standardize it. So transform का definition क्या बनेगा? We have to modify the extracted data to standardize this. And there is something which is known as load. We are pushing the data into the data warehouse. Now this process, SETL, includes typical operations that are involved in selecting the required data, extracting the data from multiple sources, operating on the data so that data from multiple sources is compatible, and loading that data into a data warehouse for analytical purpose. This sums up your SETL process. Right? So देखो अभी we are starting our journey in SQL part. We have discussed database design, star schema, structure of a data warehouse, difference between database and data warehouse, why there is need of star schema. Everything is discussed, right? Now, ACTL process में किसी को कुछ question है तो you can ask in ACTL. Anybody have any questions in ACTL? So
सर
the diagram,
लोड वाला एक बार फिर से बता देना ना.
which one?
The load one, pushing the data into the data warehouse.
Okay, okay. देखो अभी let's take an example. Let's say आपके पास एक data source है one, इसको बोलते हैं data source one. We have another data source which is data source two. Then we have another data source which is data source three, right? Then we have select SETL. इसमें आप क्या परफॉर्म करते हो ये स्टेप में? सेम थिंग, सिलेक्ट, एक्सट्रैक्ट, ट्रांसफॉर्म एंड लोड. और ये जो ट्रांसफॉर्म डेटा है, एक्सट्रैक्ट किया हुआ डेटा है, सिलेक्टेड डेटा है, वो आप पुश करते हो ना. सपोज ये डेटा वेयर हाउस है in which you have all the data, so you push that selected data into data warehouse. That is known as loading. So जो आपके पास डेटा है उसके मतलब वो डेटा डेटा वेयरहाउस में डालने के पहले आपको ये ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन करना पड़ता है और आपको ये स्टेप परफॉर्म करने पड़ते हैं. और वैसे आपका डेटा वेयरहाउस जनरेट होता है जिसमें इंटीग्रेटेड कलेक्शन ऑफ डेटा रहेगा फॉर द एनालिसिस पर्पज, राइट? अभी समझा व्हाट इज लोडिंग? So you can relate this to any example. Suppose, for an example, let us take same चीज. वो we had a database, right? यहाँ पे quantity था, यहाँ पे customer था, यहाँ पे product था, and here we had date of purchase, right? So suppose let's add one more thing, price. तो इसमें फॉर एग्जांपल आपके पास few you have few entries wherein there is a price in dollars. तो ट्रांसफॉर्म क्यों करना पड़ेगा आपको? We have to convert that into this one, Indian rupees, right? Select क्या करना पड़ेगा सबको? आप सपोज आपको एक एनालिसिस करना है, आप you want to make analysis on pizza, why there is a maximum sale of pizza or why there is a minimum sale of pizza on a specific date on weekdays. The problem statement is weekdays में आपने एनालाइज किया कि there is a very minimum sale of pizza, and what you have to do, you have to put this data into data warehouse in the form of star schema. और स्टार स्कीमा करके आपको एनालाइज करना है कि डेट वीक डेज में ही क्यों कम है, उसके ऊपर आपको सॉल्यूशन करना है. तो आप सिलेक्ट करते हो डेटा, यू सिलेक्ट ओनली डेटा कंटेनिंग पिज्जा, यू विल एक्सट्रैक्ट दैट फ्रॉम द डेटा सोर्स एंड देन यू विल ट्रांसफॉर्म दिस वेयर देयर इज अ नेसेसिटी. अगर जरूरत है तो ट्रांसफॉर्म करोगे एंड देन यू आर गोइंग टू लोड दैट डेटा इनटू डेटा वेयरहाउस, राइट? दिस विल बी अ स्टेप.
सर आप ये एक्सट्रैक्ट करना सिखाओगे?
Extract, this we generally do it in SQL, no? We'll see this thing. How do you establish a connection between a data source? How do you pull out the data? We'll see this.
Okay, sir.
So this is known as life cycle of analytics. ये सारी चीजों में common है. मतलब this is very generalistic. You take any machine learning application or you take anything related to analytics, life cycle of analytics बोलते हैं इसको. Life cycle of analytics. So for our analysis, we may not need all the data from the data source. आपको एनालिसिस करना है तो डेटा वेयर हाउस में सारा डेटा नहीं चाहिए. This is another confusion. In order to do the analysis, there is no any need of all the data from all the data sources. So we select this stage. Select stage. It's just a paper identification of what data you need from each of those data sources, of course, in your data sources or database. राइट तो आप सिर्फ वो ही डेटा सिलेक्ट करते हैं जिसका आपको एनालिसिस करना है सिलेक्ट में. Now is it clear? SETL. If this is clear, we should go to the next part, which is nothing but your journey of the SQL. Very first step, which is known as entity constraints. Constraint की क्यों जरूरत है? Why there is need of constraint? We'll see this right after the break. So it's 5:38, right? Let's have a break for कितना लेने का? 6:30 तक है ना क्लास? We have started at 4 o'clock. It's been near about 2 hours. Let's have a break for 12 to 15 minutes.
Okay,
One
sir.
more thing, if you have any questions, no, you can let me know in the chat.
Okay, sir.
So ये सब theoretical part है जिसका आपको रेफरेंस मिलेगा कब? जब अपन SQL स्टार्ट करेंगे तब.
Could you please upload this Excel sheet after completion of the class?
थियोरेटिकल नोट्स मिलेगी ना इसकी?
हाँ ये ही मिलेगा आपको. अगर आपको theoretical भी चाहिए तो भी I can give, पर इसको मॉडिफाई करना पड़ेगा.
बट सर आप एक और बोल रहे थे ना कि आप एक और नोट्स दे दोगे जब मैंने वो पूछा था.
हाँ 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 yes. You want this thing, no? What is your question?
Why can't, yeah.
Hmm. Yes, yes. I'll provide notes wherein it will summarize all these points one by one. मतलब if you go through that notes, तो ये points आपको directly समझ में आएगा. You don't need to perform or you don't need to go with the recording.
Yes, sir.
I'll add extensive. So, one more thing, there will be case studies in SQL, which will be, I mean, the case studies are the projects that I have worked on in the industry. In our organization, we are using SQL, right? So we will see, but that will be at the end, advanced SQL part. Usme we are going to take real life case study, real life data, and we are going to perform some operations, right?
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
So don't worry, अभी आपको समझ में नहीं आया है तो I'll be giving this, I'll explaining this each and every concept by using the notes on Excel.
Excuse me, sir.
5:41 to 6 o'clock. Yeah. Anybody have any confusion? और किसी को
Sir.
कुछ पूछना और? Yeah.
सर आज मेरा पहला दिन है तो इससे पहले मतलब पार्ट कवर हुआ है या फिर आज से ही स्टार्ट हुआ है, ये आप बता सकते हैं?
राइट. देखो ये कैसा है कि ये फर्स्ट डे है SQL का. दिस योर फर्स्ट डे, तो आज से ही एसक्यूएल स्टार्ट हुआ है।
और सर एक्सेल खत्म हो गया है ऐसा भी, मतलब थोड़ी देर पहले स्टूडेंट ने
एक्सेल,
एक बात की।
यस एक्सेल खत्म हुआ है, बट अगर आपको एसक्यूएल एक्सेल अटेंड करना है तो आपका मतलब देयर विल बी अनदर बैच विच विल बी स्टार्टिंग। देखो सीक्वेंस कैसा है, एक्सेल देन एसक्यूएल देन पाइथन देन मशीन लर्निंग एंड देन डीप लर्निंग। So ये flow में रहेगा. There will be again another batch where we are going to start Excel module. So if you have missed this thing, join this. You can join this batch for Excel.
ओके सर।
And you'd be teaching all this?
Yeah, yes.
सर ये एक्सीएल का कितने डेज का लाइक है मतलब प्रोग्राम?
Sorry.
मैं भी लाइक आज ही मेरा फर्स्ट डे है, तो मेरा भी लाइक शायद एक्सेल का मिस हुआ है। तो एक्सेल का कितना डेज का वो लाइक ट्रेनिंग का है?
Excel ना, Excel का I think 4 days हुए थे, 1 2 3, I don't remember actually. But don't worry, जो मिस हुआ है ना आपका नेक्स्ट बैचेस में आपको मिलेगा.
Okay.
One more thing, अगर मुझे SQL चालू करना होता था I could have started from this. Many of the instructor will directly start from this. वो install करते and direct select star from customers. Directly ये कर. That does not
आपको
again means
बेसिक क्लियर हो गए सर?
right.
Sir, we are working on which software like NoS, Postgre, MS SQL or any other? Which type of software, sir?
Right now we are using SQL only, MySQL. This one.
Okay, sir.
Right. So yes, किसी को और कुछ questions है तो you can discuss.
So is the syntax or any writing method is different between MySQL and PostgreSQL?
Syntax, no?
Yes.
Because there are basically, to summarize this, there are two types of system. First is NoSQL and another is SQL. SQL we use it for structured data in the form of tabular data. ये unstructured data में काम, मतलब फॉर एग्जांपल आपके पास इमेजेस भी है, वीडियोस भी है, तो वो नो एसक्यूएल में आप कर दो. एंड व्हाट वाज योर क्वेश्चन?
Sir, the writing method or syntax method like PostgreSQL and MySQL, जिस तरह से आप बता रहे थे हम MySQL पर वर्क करेंगे तो उनका राइटिंग मेथड कुछ डिफरेंट है क्या, ये पूछ रहा था.
ओके, यू आर आस्किंग सिंटैक्स फ्रॉम पोस्टग्रेसक्यूएल एंड मायस्क्यूएल, इज इट डिफरेंट और नॉट? प्रीटी सिमिलर है दोनों का. ओनली एक केस में कैसा है, मतलब एक माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का एसक्यूएल का सॉफ्टवेयर है, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का, इफ यू सी, and this MySQL Workbench is a different software or different tool that way. तो उसमें कैसा है, एक सेमीकोलन का सीन है, एक इसमें सेमीकोलन देना पड़ता है टू एंड द लाइन, एक इसमें नहीं देना पड़ता. तो 95% ऑफ द टाइम प्रीटी सिमिलर ही है, 95-98%. बट एक माइन्यूट डिफरेंस रहेगा सेमीकोलन का या फिर इसका सिंटैक्स में.
माइक्रोसॉफ्ट में देना नहीं पड़ता है सर, मतलब कंपल्सन नहीं है
या
माइक्रोसॉफ्ट में? एमएक्स एक्सएल की बात कर रहे हैं ना,
हम्म,
तो वहाँ पर सेमी कॉलम मतलब कंपल्सरी नहीं है सर?
हाँ, इट्स नॉट कंपलसरी नो, बट इसमें कंपलसरी है MySQL में.
माई एसक्यूएल में कंपल्सरी है?
यस, बट डोंट वरी अबाउट सिंटैक्स कि बहुत ऐसा मेजर डिफरेंस नहीं है प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज जैसा, सी एंड जावा एंड पाइथन जैसा. डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट.
we can set rules and we can set security while creating a table.
So let us try to understand the entity constraint. Let us spend some time trying to understand how do you design relational database. How do we design relational database? Before we understand how to design the relational database, we have to understand the concept that goes behind the design of it. That is relational database. What is relational database? And that I can call as the relational data model, right? So you think of a data model as a vocabulary or a collection vocabulary or a collection of operations, collection of operations that help me design that particular database using a specific data model. Using a specific data model. So the data model that we will be using is called as relational database. So what is relational database? A relational data model which is supported by lots of relational database product. So ये जो product है और ये जो software है, it is not a relational database product, such as we have MySQL, we have Microsoft SQL Server, we have Oracle, right? We have IBM DB2, and all these are called as relational database management system. All these are called as relational database management system because they all understand their relational data model, which is why even we have to understand what is the relational data model if you have to work with relational database management systems. So let us see what is or what are the different elements of the vocabulary of the relational data model are. Elements in the vocabulary of RD, relational database, RDBMS. We can say it as RDBMS. So the first is data is organized in the form of tables and columns. This is very similar if you are familiar with Excel, and right now we are working in Excel, right? So the Excel, we have sales. In Excel, we have sales that are there. Then we have rows and column. So these are also in the relational data model. We call it as tables. So rows and form, table and column means table. Sorry, rows and column means table. So we can have example of table called as an employee table, right? Let's try to write down this. We have a table called as employee table. इसका नाम क्या है? Employee table. इसमें क्या है आपके पास? You have employee ID. Suppose you have name and you have age of the employee. We can say that there are a lot of attributes or columns associated with the employee table. For example, we have discussed employee ID, name of the employee, age of the employee, and so on. These are all referred to as attributes or columns. You can clearly see that the columns are actually vertically positioned and the data itself is organized in the form of rows. So there are information about the 100 employees. So we can have information about the 100 plus employees that are being captured that will appear as 100 rows, exactly like you will see in Excel, right? So this is the most basic unit of information that is captured in a relational database, right? Fair enough. So we have uh, these are called as attributes. इसको क्या बोलते हैं? Attributes or columns. But then we say that it does not, my relational database design does not end there. For example, it does not end by simply saying, oh, there is a employee table, that there is a department table. Suppose we have department. So we cannot just say, yes, there is employee table, there is department table. It's not as simple as that, right? In which we have department ID, then we can have department name and address of the department, and so on. We cannot simply say that I'll give you a list of tables and this is my database design. What we also want to be able to capture and convey is what are known as constraint, right? So we cannot simply say this is my employee table, this is my department table, you can do and design this relational database. It's not like that, right? There is something which is known as constraint. And what do you mean by constraint? Because you want to say that we cannot simply blindly put whatever data you want in whatever table. You want to add right, it has to be in right format, right? So we say that, okay, let us put some rules behind what data can go inside a table, in what form, or what are the ways in which it cannot be constrained. This is known as constraint. So they are referred to as constraint in the relational data model. Generally, when we talk about constraint, we do not talk about we talk about three kind of constraint. So let me add a definition for constraint. You know that we cannot simply blindly put whatever data you want in whatever table. You want it right? You want it right in the correct format. So rules behind what data can go inside a table in what form. This is known as constraint. So there are three types of constraint. When we talk about constraint, we refer to as three constraint. One is your entity constraint. Second is your referential constraint. And third is your semantic constraint. Entity constraint, referential constraint, semantic constraint. Okay, so we'll try to understand each of these constraints before we get into actual design of database. Now let us try to understand first point, which is entity constraint. So how it can go is, it says that within a given table, what are the restriction on values of those attributes that you want to put? For example, in the employee table. In the employee table, we say that there is an employee ID attribute, there is name attribute, and there is age attribute. So entity constraint, I want to specify that value of employee ID must be not repeat within the table. Entity constraint में क्या डाल रहा हूँ कि मेरा जो employee ID है, that must not be repetitive. That must not be repetitive. So this is your first constraint that we have put. Value of employee ID must not repeat within the table, right? So this is a constraint in the relational data model. We express this particular constraint by saying that this is attribute. This attribute is unique. Employee ID जो मेरा है, that has to be unique. So we say that uniqueness constraint. uniqueness constraint. So far, as far as this particular table is concerned, right? So what is worth noting here is that we should be very careful in choosing which attribute we get impacted by a particular constraint. So here in this example, we are saying employee ID is one which is unique, but it is okay for two people two employees to have same name, right? It is okay to have two employees to have same name. So we should not be specifying uniqueness constant to the name. Name को uniqueness constant दिया है क्या यहाँ पे? No constant for name, right? There can be employee which has two same name. For example, I have an employee जिसका नाम है मोहन. उसका employee ID है 1. I have one. I have an employee जिसका employee ID 2 है, जिसका नाम मोहन और सरनेम एस है सब. इसका मोहन है और इसका आर है, right? सेम नाम के दो एम्प्लॉयज हो सकते हैं. So you cannot put this. So employees to have same name, we should not be specifying uniqueness constant on the name attribute. In other words, there are no hard and fast rules imposed by the data model itself saying that what should be made as unique and what should be not. It is entirely up to your application to figure that out. On the other hand, instead of employee, if this happened to be a product table, for example, in that case, you might want to say that product ID, user ID is unique. Product ID, suppose आपके पास और एक टेबल जिसमें है product ID, then product name is unique. Product ID is unique, obviously. So just because it is a name, it does not mean that it should always be unique, or nor it does not mean it should never be unique, right? So depending upon your application, you have to specify your constant. You can also see that, for example, age, right? There can be multiple people with having same age, which is perfectly fine. So you don't need to say anything in design. You don't need to specify any constant for age, right? You limit values in a certain way that is called as uniqueness constant. Now, I want to make this uniqueness constant even more bit little stricter. ये हो गया uniqueness constant, but I want to make it more strict. What if I want to say that employee ID not only be unique, I also want to ensure that every employee is having an employee ID. ध्यान से सुनो अभी है. I want to specify every employee what I said is every employee is having, every employee is not only unique, I also want to ensure that every employee ID or sorry, in other ways, every employee has employee ID. So you may be wondering what is the difference between these two requirements, uniqueness and not null करके concept है. इसमें difference क्या है? So for example, for ease of understanding, let's assume we are giving employee IDs based on the serial numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ऐसे employee ID. So suppose there are 100 employees. So one of the requirement
not null में I guess duplicate हो सकता है. I guess I'm not sure.
I'm explaining this to me. So there are 100 employees. One of the requirement that uniqueness constant says that the number is appearing in the model column should never repeat. it's not necessarily saying that it should be 1 to 100, but it has to be unique. But imagine this particular situation. Imagine a situation wherein I'm sure all of you are working professional. So if you are joining a company and on day one, when you enter the company with your documents, for an example, joining form, you'd be surprised that your data is already there in their employee table, except your employee ID. So obviously they don't assign employee ID until you finish the joining formalities. So there is this little gap between assigning employee ID and where you are about to join, right? So in order to accommodate data into a table, I will say as long as the values assigned, it has to be unique, but it is okay not to be assigned yet. Then we say there are 100 employees already there and 101 employee wo jo aa raha hai, working in all my name, is there my age, is there my other number, is there all the details all will be there, employee ID is left vacant. They are waiting for me to finish the verification process. In this situation, we'll say employee ID will carry a value. What is known as null. So null value is acceptable. कहाँ पे? Employee ID, where the column is having unique constraint. Are you guys understanding the situation? कि null values acceptable है कब? जहाँ पे new employee है और उसका registration formality बाकी है. So uniqueness constraint में null values is acceptable. First point. Now I'll tell you one more situation where I'll tell you something which is slightly counterintuitive. There is another 10-second employee. There's another 10-second employee who is walking in along with your badge, so that employee also will get initially an employee ID as null. तो उसको भी क्या मिलेगा? उसका भी joining formality नहीं हुआ है 102. उसको भी null रहेगा. So you may be wondering, where we have to see two people having null values, it's a violation of my uniqueness constraint. Is it a violation? Employee ID तो uniqueness दिया था मैंने, but दोनों का null है. Is it a violation?
Yes, sir.
It's not a violation. It said that this is uniqueness applies to non-null values, so you can have any number of employees with null values. It's still not a violation of the uniqueness constraint, as long as the non-null values for that particular column are unique. तो null values आपके multiple रह सकते हैं ना, obviously 103, 104, 105. There is no any violation. But मेरा 99 और 99 double है, so this is a violation of this uniqueness concept. Are you guys understanding this point now? So I want to put an additional constraint saying that I want, let us go with the product example. कहाँ पे product example? यहाँ पे. Okay, so product example में क्या है? We have product ID, we have product name. So there is, I want to have slightly different constraint. I want to say that, you know what may be in the employee example, it is possible that employee ID cannot exist until they finish the joining formalities. But I don't think product names are like that. When I'm entering information about the product names into my system, I want them to be unique and I want them to exist, which implies that I don't want to take any null values, right? मेरे product ID में मैं डाल रहा हूँ suppose 1 2 3 4 5, यहाँ पे null values रह सकेगा क्या? नहीं रह सकेगा, because I want to make sure कि मेरे product ID में, मतलब मेरे product table में product ID रहना ही चाहिए, right? Saying that
Yes.
product name must be unique and it should not take any null values. Let's say product name unique रहना चाहिए और उसमें no null values चाहिए. But employee ID में ऐसा नहीं है, right? But ऐसा मैं बोल सकता हूँ क्या? For an example, मेरा डिपार्टमेंट है null, मतलब मैंने एम्प्लॉयज असाइन किया है 101 एम्प्लॉयज है. डिपार्टमेंट आईडी, सपोज यहाँ पे डिपार्टमेंट आईडी दे रहा हूँ मैं, वो बिलोंग कर रहा है डिपार्टमेंट 05 से. बट यहाँ पे डिपार्टमेंट 05 का नाम ही नहीं है यहाँ पे। आप बोल रहे हो कि मेरा डिपार्टमेंट, आप बैठो वहाँ पे, डिपार्टमेंट आ रहा है वहाँ पे। कैन वी से लाइक दिस? वी कैन नॉट से, नो। मतलब आप एम्प्लॉय असाइन कर रहे हो डिपार्टमेंट को और उसको बोल रहे हो कि डिपार्टमेंट अभी आ रहा है कंपनी में। ऐसा होगा कभी पॉसिबल?
No.
इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल, ऑब्वियसली। So there comes your very important constraint in your SQL. What is that? I
Not,
know many of you have
not done.
not null, but unique or not null. So it is known as, I don't want to take any
But
null
sir,
value.
मतलब एक क्वेश्चन था सर, मैंने कॉलेज में ना जब हम लोग को एसक्यूएल पढ़ाया जा रहा था, तो उसमें यूनिक में था कि ये नहीं होना चाहिए, नल वैल्यूज नहीं होना चाहिए।
नहीं, दैट इज रॉन्ग, नो। मैंने आपको एक पूरा केस स्टडी बताया कि नल वैल्यूज रह सकते हैं, नल वैल्यूज, मल्टीपल नल वैल्यूज है। इसका मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि यूनिकनेस कॉन्स्टेंट वायलेट हो रहा है। रह सकता है ना। सपोज मैंने फाइव फाइव एम्प्लॉयज ज्वाइन कर रहे मेरे, उनको इनिशियली आपके एंट्री में नल वैल्यूज तो रहेगा ऑब्वियसली, उनका नेम रहेगा और ये सारे एम्प्लॉय आईडी, उनको उन्होंने फॉर्मेलिटी नहीं किया है ज्वाइनिंग का, तो ऑब्वियसली यू विल हैव
सर
नल
हम
वैल्यू।
लोग इस कॉलम पे थोड़ी हम लोग यूनिक डालेंगे सर, उसके बाद तो वो जो हम लोग सेकेंडरी कॉलम जो मेंटेन करना है जिसमें हम लोग 101 102।
देखो आप क्या कर रहे हो, यू आर कंफ्यूजिंग दिस एम्प्लॉय आईडी विद प्राइमरी की। मैंने ऐसा बोला क्या प्राइमरी की है एम्प्लॉय आईडी? नहीं है। तो प्राइमरी की का कंस्ट्रेंट क्या है? इट शुड बी यूनिक, इट शुड बी नॉट नल। मैंने बोला अभी अभी तक कि एम्प्लॉय आईडी प्राइमरी की है? नहीं बोला ना मैंने।
नहीं सर।
तो आप वो कंफ्यूजन कर रहे हैं। मैं अपन अभी यहाँ इस पॉइंट पे है कि प्रोडक्ट नेम या फिर प्रोडक्ट आईडी इज योर प्राइमरी की। प्राइमरी की क्यों है? बिकॉज प्रोडक्ट आईडी नल नहीं रह सकता, फर्स्ट पॉइंट, और इट इज यूनिक। सो अपन ये डिस्कशन पे थे कि प्रोडक्ट आईडी इज योर प्राइमरी की। सो I don't want to take any null values in this column. So I'm saying that product name must be unique. It should not take any null values under any under the entity constant. There's a nice shortcut available to say that, to say this as a primary key. Then उन लोगों ने ऐसा बोला इसको primary key नाम देते हैं. So when I designate a column as a primary key, what it means is it has to be unique and it cannot be null. So it has to be non null. Okay. So forget two nulls. Even one null cannot be there in this constraint as a primary key. One null cannot be there. It is abbreviated as PK, PK constraint. So think of a PK constraint as a special case of unique constraint wherein we are putting an additional restriction saying that it has to be unique and it should not be null, so that it is known as entity integrity constraint. Now I hope you guys have got clarity about this कि प्राइमरी की क्या है और सिर्फ यूनिकनेस कंस्ट्रेंट क्या है. इज इट क्लियर नाउ एवरीवन?
यस सर।